Welcome to A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie. And today we have a show prepared for you. We're talking about being balanced as young adults, and oftentimes it's not easy. Today, our guest will just really dive in to talk about 21 and next steps. What would you say to your 21-year-old self? Today, we're going to be joined by Katrina Smith of Empowered Roots Education Consulting, Dr. Tierney, our Level Up coach. We're also invited today to be on our show, our family life strategist or family strategist. That would be Charlotte Avery. And then also Deborah Bell of P3 Coaching. Welcome in, family, because boy, do we have a lot to talk about. When we think about these 21-year-olds today, I'm telling you, I sometimes don't know what direction to point them in because they are oftentimes in so many different directions. I want to kick off our show today talking about what would you tell your 21-year-old self? And in talking to your 21-year-old self, how would you navigate the future today? I mean, this world that we live in looks nothing like what we were and how we were functioning when we were 21. I'm going to start with Charlotte Avery. Charlotte, what would you tell your 21-year-old self?
I would tell my 21-year-old self to live life a little bit more. I mean, at 21, I was very busy. I was in college, I was working, I was an athletic trainer, so I was traveling with athletes. I was doing a lot. And so some of my 21-year-old self, so first of all, I partied a lot in high school, so I really didn't party a lot in college. But I would have had a little bit more fun, and I would not have taken myself so seriously, and I would have lived a little bit more.
I like that. I'm going to definitely come back to you with some questions because, girl, I got questions. Let me tell you, I got questions. Katrina, talk to us about your 21-year-old self. What would you tell her?
At 21 years old, I had started my first teacher job. And so I was able to retire early because of that. But I agree with Charlotte. I would have lived a little more and I would have taken advantage of opportunities. Sometimes when you're young like that, you think those opportunities will always be there. I would definitely go back and take advantage of some other opportunities, continuing education, exploring the world, traveling a little bit more.
I like that as well. Dr. Tierney.
I honestly would tell my 21-year-old self, keep doing what you're doing, girl. Because when I tell you 21, I was living in Miami, going to the University of Miami, Florida. I was having a good time. I was getting a good education, being exposed to a lot of new things, cultures, languages, foods. So I was studious, I had to get my work and do what needed to be done and my work study job. But I had a good time. Okay. I had a really good time on South Beach. So I had a really good balance of knowing when to take myself seriously and knowing when to cut loose and just enjoy life. So I would tell my 21-year-old self, girl, keep doing what you're doing because you're going to look back on those days and it is not going to be anything else like it.
That's very interesting wisdom. Deborah Bell.
Yes.
You're 21-year-old
by the time I turned 21, I had been married for 2 years. So the thing that I would say is slow down. You don't have to do it all right now and stick with your plan. Being married was not part of the plan, but that's where I ended up. And so I would tell myself, you have time for all of that, but stick to your plan. I got off base from my plan, but it all worked out.
Interesting. So each of you has talked about, missed opportunities, taking opportunities. Today, being 21, oftentimes opportunity can be stressful because there's not a support system that is there to guide, aid, and direct. And listening to peers can oftentimes land 21-year-olds in this 21st century in trouble. Katrina, talk to us a little bit about some of the guidelines that 21-year-olds should put in their toolkit in order for them to create, I won't say balance because that's hard, when you're 21, you want to, have the best time of your life. YOLO, you only live once, and they live it to the fullest. But what are some of the things that you believe 21-year-olds should put in their toolkit?
One of the things I would suggest for a 21-year-old is to find a mentor. Find a mentor. Find someone that is doing what you want to do and ask them to be your mentor so that you can learn and grow with them, and they can provide you some strategies so that you don't get stuck or make some of the mistakes they made early on. I would definitely advocate for that for a 21-year-old. Find a mentor. It can be very helpful.
Mm, I like mentorship, Katrina, because it provides individuals with an opportunity to have someone to talk to. Charlotte, now we know you got how many kids?
7.
7. And how many are in college?
Soon to be 3 now, because one just graduated from high school.
So in that age bracket, what are you putting in their toolkit as they prepare to leave and have gone away?
Oh my goodness. So one of the things that we're continuing to talk to them about as far as their toolkit is self-respect,
Mhm.
and boundaries, and being true to yourself. We really try to stress, know thyself, and really just because when you're, like my number 3 who just graduated from high school, she's getting ready to go into a different environment, but it's not going to be the same as home, and everybody wasn't raised like you. So be true to yourself and be true, know who you are, know whose you are, and all of those things. And really, also too, one thing that I have stressed with all of my children is that it's okay to change your mind, because even as they're graduating, and going into college, and I used to call them grown agers, right? Once they turned 18, because at 18 you think you're grown, but you're really not. You're just a grown ager because you're clearly not doing anything for yourself. But I always told my kids, you say you know what you're going to major in, and I think that that's great. But I wanted them to be clear that you're going to college for you, you're living this life for you. And so, it's okay to change your mind, and not to be afraid of change, knowing that change is good, and you get to change your mind because you're not, so far ahead in your life that you're like, oh my gosh, I'm lamenting being here. I wish I had changed my major, and so that's another thing. And then find your people. You got to find your people. I mean, you have to be able to find your people, and pray that you find them quickly. And if you don't, know that that's okay, because you still have time to find them too.
Finding your people isn't always easy. I think even as grown people, we have a difficult time finding our tribe, keeping a tribe, knowing who's
Yes.
supposed to be in our village, and working through all of those things. Dr. Tierney, you often talk to us about boundaries and the difference between barriers and boundaries and those types of things. And I think 21-year-olds oftentimes can't tell the difference because they want to love everybody. They're still searching for friends and identity. What does identity look like at 21?
Mhm. Well, identity at 21 is often very fluid, right? Because we know what it was that we were taught by our parents, by our mentors, by our environment, by our family, by the schools that we, went to. And so all of those things come in and kind of help shape our identity. But we're still in this space where we haven't really locked into who we are, because we may be in that space of insecurity. Our body has just kind of gone through some changes in puberty, and our voices have dropped, and acne. And now all of a sudden, like, why are my hips sitting like this? And wait a minute, what's the latest fashion? And so we get into that space of insecurity. Our confidence kind of takes a hit, and I'm supposed to be grown up now and know what it is that I want to do when I barely really even understand kind of what's happening right now. We also get into this space of people pleasing, where we just really want our, friends, our family to just like us. We're not in that space where we're ready to kind of go rogue, so to speak, and just do our own thing, because we haven't really defined that. So that 21-year-old space is that space where our identity is very fluid, and so what I tell, the people that are in my sphere that I have, influence over, be it clients or, family members, is that remember you're going to make mistakes.
Mhm.
Things are going to happen. I think perfectionism, particularly in the age of social media, where we're
Mhm.
able to see everybody's highlight reel, we're able to see the perfect pictures and the perfect poses and not realizing really they got one foot up on the wall and you're only seeing half of their face and the bottom half they got on pajamas and you think they're in this exotic location and all these things. And so there's this pressure for perfection that these 20-year-old 21-year-olds have that we did not have because we
Mhm.
couldn't everybody's highlight reel. Okay. And so just really kind of giving yourself that space and that permission to know that you're going to make mistakes. Nothing and no one is ever perfect. And right now, while you are in that fluid space, allow yourself to just flow through it, grow through it, stick with those things that are a part of your morals, your value, your integrity, and allow yourself to just explore the other areas of you that are coming to the surface as you are now experiencing this new stage, this new space of life.
Hmm. When we come back after the break, I want to dive into that a little bit more because oftentimes family construct, lifestyle in the home plays a part in how 21-year-olds see themselves. So, how do we help our 21-year-olds deal with social anxiety and leaving drama, trauma, triggering things from home into their new life and space as they pivot into being 21? We'll be back in a moment after the break.
Hey y'all, welcome to The Other Side of Change, only on the Black Star Network and hosted by myself, Bria Baker, and my good sis, Jamira Burley. We are just two millennial women tackling everything at the intersection of politics, gender, and pop culture.
And we don't just settle for commentary. This is about solution-driven dialogue to get us to the world as it could be and not just as it is.
Watch us on the Black Star Network, so tune in to The Other Side of Change.
Welcome back, everybody. And as you can tell, learning how to be 21 doesn't come with an instruction manual. But the good thing is, there are people in your space who have been 21 before, who have really great life experiences, who can help guide you down the path that you are seeking. I want to ask Dr. Tierney a few more questions because you leaned into something, Dr. T, that you said they have to try to figure out how to navigate some things on their own while at the same time recognizing mistakes are going to happen. So, how do you recover if in your home, a lot of them are, on their own maybe 3 years now because they've been in school, they've been working, but yet they are still trying to figure out, oh, I'm 21 and I'm legal. I can do all these kind of things. You can't tell me anything. And I think sometimes that gets them into trouble. So how do we help lay that foundation for not social security, but to have socialization security in
Yeah.
becoming 21?
Yeah. Here's a hard truth. Here's a hard truth. Sometimes you just gotta let them. They
Mhm.
let them hit their head against the wall. Let them
Mhm.
let them have to pay that fee, that fine, that let them if they don't go to class and they get okay, well you got to sit out a semester. I'm not going up there to talk to that dean and try to get you back in school. So I think a lot of times we put them too much in a bubble to where they're not allowed to just make the mistakes because so much is trying to prevent them from making the mistakes and prevent the boo-boos and prevent. No, I know what I know because of how many times I hit my head against the wall. And eventually you'll wake up and as the Bible said, you'll come to yourself and say, wait a minute, I might want to do something different. Or wait, I thought this is what I wanted, but I really don't want that. I really want something else. And to go through that process of becoming that includes some mistakes. It includes, having that awkward conversation with that friend. It includes some friendship fallouts. It includes making some social faux pas. It includes all of that, and so I think there's a double responsibility here. One on the part of us who have been 21, for us to not act like we wasn't ever 21. You
Right.
know, for us to not act like we just, we just floated through our 21-year-old years and never did anything wrong. No, that's why I tell people all the time, oh, baby, I was drunk on South Beach. I was out skirts up the hill, shirts down the hill, and I was having a good time because I'm not going to sit here and act like I didn't bump my head against the wall and I didn't do things that I'd later look back and go, ooh, girl, that wasn't the best decision, because if I did, then I wouldn't be here. I had to
Mhm.
go through that in order to get here. So let us not act like when we see the 21-year-olds making the mistakes, don't do this at them. Just smile and say, yeah, we just didn't have social media, so you just didn't see mine. You
Mm,
know, and for the
absolutely.
21-year-olds to give themselves the permission and know you're going to make mistakes. You know,
Right.
even though there's this, again, that pressure of performance and perfectionism that has come from elementary school and middle school, where they had to be on all the sports teams and all the extracurriculars and get all the straight A's. Now, sugar, when you come out here in this deep water, you gonna flounder. Sometimes you may fail, but that's where you really learn and that's where you become. So if you're trying to hold yourself to this perfect standard, you're going to shortchange what it is that you really need to know about you, about life, and about what it is that you ultimately want to do and who God designed you to be. And so I think that that's the responsibility on both sides, for us to be honest and not look at them like, something wrong with them, but also for them to just let themselves make the mistakes, and for us to let them make the mistakes so that they can then become that 21, 31, 41-year old that is well rounded and locked into who they are and whose they are.
Absolutely. I want Charlotte to dive in because you're navigating that space right now.
Yes.
Talk to us, because like, as a family strategist, how are you helping the family and your 21s and some things manage these things?
So before I touch that, I want everybody here to, since we're all together, to be honest and raise your hand. How much do you thank God that smartphones and social media was not around for 21? Raise your hand.
All hands, all
But
hands.
Yes. We thank God
hallelujah.
that we lift our hands and our 10 toes, that, social media and smartphones were not around when we were 21. And like Dr. Tierney said, like, we can't forget, even though we were not in the age of technology in the way that it is right now, we can't forget who we were and what we were doing at 21. So for me, with my children, especially my children who are 18 and older, I no longer call them grown agers. I call them emerging adults, because they're emerging into adulthood. I have to remember that their frontal lobes, they're not 25 yet, so their frontal lobes are not fully developed. So their decision making and all of the things are gonna have some challenges. And to speak to one thing that Dr. Tierney said, about the age of perfectionism and things like that, there's no such thing as being perfect, whether you're a teenager, whether you're a mom, whether you're whoever you are. There's no, perfectionism is just, it just sets you up for like feelings of inadequacy and insecurity. And their generation is there. They're dealing with that so much. So for me, like, I try to remember, who I was at 21, but then, I also try to remember who my children are, and they have different bents. And Lim might not be moving like Abby, and Abby might not be moving like Gabby, and Gabby might not be moving like either of them. But we have to remember, as I have to remember as I'm parenting my own children, who they are individually and collectively, and know what their roles are. And so for me, like, it's even difficult for me because there is a pulling away. And as parents, we have to honor the growing up process, even though we don't want to.
Mhm.
And it's like, okay, it's, the Bible says children obey your parents. And I hate saying this because it always comes back, right? But the Bible says children obey your parents, but then it says honor your mother and father. Well, we have to remember that our children are our children, but at a certain age, they are no longer children.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
that's the difference of when respect and honor come in, because, I have to remember that I have raised my children and I have trained them up in the way that they should go. And when they get 18 and certain ages and stuff like that, they no longer necessarily have to obey me, except for when they're living in my house. You see what I'm saying? So
Mhm.
there's so many things. It can be such a sticky area, but even parents have to honor the growing up process, because what we don't want to do is we don't want to stunt their growth. We don't want to hover so much and, be these helicopter parents as they're emerging into adults, that they don't make mistakes, that they don't honor their mistakes, that they don't even know how to function, because we've always come to rescue them. And so when Mel Robbins came out with her book The Let Them Theory, oh my gosh, that was that was really something that allowed me to woosah, because I was dealing with some challenges even within my own self and my own parenting with my emerging adults and things of that nature. But it's helped me. But also we need to be honest as their parents, and we need to be honest about who we were and what we were doing, and understand that it's okay to have hard conversations with your children, and give your children permission to ask you questions.
I think that those things are very valid, and they come from this place of stewardship. And I'm going to tap into our clergy for a minute, Deb and Katrina, because Charlotte mentioned something important. It's children, obey their parents in the Lord, for it's right. Honor thy mother and their father. And then there's this other one that says, fathers, do not exasperate their children. And there's a whole lot of exasperating going on, which puts the stewardship principle of parenting kind of off skew, because letting go and holding on are like this tug of war. So let's talk, Deb and Katrina, about this spiritual warfare that parents go through with their children, trying to help them set out on their own, while at the same time wanting to hold them close so that they don't fail. What does that dynamic look like, and how do we help parents and those who are raising 21s get there? I know one of y'all want to jump in first, but I'll call on Deb.
Okay, so I think you described it well with the tug of war. While we want our children to really do well when they're away from us, and we want to see them grow and develop into responsible adults, there is that sense of, but you still need me in order to do that. I'm still, I need to still be a part of that. And while that's true, we do need to loosen the reins. A lot of times, our wanting to be in control is more about us than it is about
Mm-hmm.
about our
Absolutely.
children. And
Absolutely.
so we have
Mm-hmm.
to recognize that our children, we put in them the things that they need. And we can stand a little bit off and still guide, give suggestions, ask questions that will help them in their decision making process. But I agree with the things that have already been said. Sometimes we need to just allow them to make the mistake, but be there for them if and when they need us. It is so important. I had a hard time cutting the apron strings, if you will, with my son, but he really helped me to come to a place of saying, you know what, he's got it, and I gotta let go. But it was hard because I still wanted to have that sense of control that I had had all along throughout his life. But again, sometimes that's more about us than it is our children, and we have to be conscious of not overstepping and allow them to grow and develop and experience some things on their own.
Absolutely, Katrina.
So, first, when we think about spiritual warfare, it doesn't mean you're doing something wrong. It often sometimes means you're doing something right. We have to remember that they're 21-year-olds and they're making a transition. Hopefully, while they were growing, you've already poured something into them. The enemy knows that they're at a crossroad. And so, as you are releasing the reins, you need to pray without ceasing for them, because you've already poured into them what they should know. Now, they're going to do some things
Mm-hmm.
that we all have done. We
Mm-hmm.
didn't always do right, but that allows them to have that perspective to get to where God is trying to get them. If they did everything you told them, they would not be the person God called them to be. Sometimes they need to make their own decisions, and you need to let them make their own decisions. Dr. T said it best. Sometimes they have to hit a wall and then them come back to you. But I think that one of the other things we can do is make sure that we've equipped our children with the word. Is
Mhm.
one thing, but they need to know the word for themselves. People used to say, that's my grandmama's Jesus. Well, no, baby, you need your own. You need to have your own relationship with Jesus, right? So
Mhm.
you have to equip them with the word. And then remember, the mind is the main battleground where
Mhm.
things happen. So you have to have poured into your child, and you have to recognize and have a relationship with them, because if you see them going astray, you may need to tell them, I think you may need to talk to somebody, you may need a therapist. But you have to remember, the battle starts in the mind. And so what we need to do is make sure that we have girded our children, and that they have the necessary tools to know when they need help and where to go to get help.
Mm. I love everything that you said. We're going to pop for a second for a break. But when we come back in this next block, we really need to unpack mental health, because as you can hear, there are different things that affect how we think about how we go about not only pivoting toward 21, but how do we release ourselves from those things that are holding us up to be great. We'll be back in a moment after the break.
What's up, y'all? Look, Fanbase is more than a platform. It's a movement to empower creators, offering a unique opportunity for everyday people to invest in Black-owned tech, infrastructure, and help shape the future of social media. Investing in technology is essential for creating long-term wealth and influence in the digital age. The Black community must not only consume tech, we must own it.
Discover how equity crowdfunding can serve as a powerful tool for funding Black businesses, allowing entrepreneurs to raise capital directly through their community through the Jobs Act.
Welcome back, everybody. And as you can tell, wow, I even am taking some notes, because I recognize and value and understand the importance of being able to be in the right headspace to deal with all the things that parents have to deal with. I want to jump in with Charlotte for this particular start of the conversation, because mental health plays a very big part in how our children see themselves and how they're able to self-regulate when they're away. How do guardians, parents, individuals who are working with young people who are stepping out into the world today, how do they help them establish what good mental health looks like? Because we always say we listen and we don't judge. We look and we don't judge. And then we turn right around and start texting somebody and be judgy. So how do we help, ourselves and others know that they're in a proper mental health to be able to move forward into being 21?
So one of the first things that we need to do is watch as well as pray, because when you have parented a child, you pretty much know like how they move and things like that. And you also have to remember that you are not your only your child's only sphere of influence. And so there are things that your children are going to deal with and go through that they've seen on social media, that they've seen on TV, that they've seen at school, with coaches, and in dealing with extracurricular activities. And sometimes when you see the switch flip, and you see that something is off with your child, you've got to really be able to, first, you've seen it, so you've identified it, and now you've got to pray about it. And then you can't be so scary in asking about it, because sometimes what I find is that parents, sometimes we want to shy away from knowing when to refer, because we want to feel like we're their only source. But the reality of it is that I am not my only child's resource, and that's okay. And sometimes I think as parents, we have to not feel inadequate or as if we did something wrong because now our child is going through a mental health issue. Sometimes we were the problem, right?
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes they're going through other things. And so one of my biggest things is knowing when to refer. And when I say that, I mean knowing when to refer outside of yourself, because there are people who can coach your kids. There are therapists who can help your children. And there just may be some things that are not in your wheelhouse. Yes, I am the family strategist, but I don't know everything. So at the point that, and you have to listen to your kids too, because sometimes your kids will tell you, I think I need to go to therapy.
Mm-hmm.
Well, guess what? If they feel that, then you really need to do some digging and find out why. Then you need to ask yourself, is this something that's in my wheelhouse, or is this something that I need to refer out? Because the reality of it is sometimes our children need to talk to somebody who's not us. And there's no harm, no foul in that. It's saying, you know what, I honor you enough to tell me to see a need, for you to express a need, and for me to help you get the help that you need. And it's okay that help does not come from me.
Yeah.
I find that to be extremely interesting. And those of you who've raised children, you're really setting the tone. Because Charlotte, you said something about the style of parenting that can exist. Because you said sometimes the parent is the problem. And I know there's permissive parenting, there's the helicopter parenting, there's the authoritative parenting styles. And sometimes all of these styles push children away from feeling open enough to talk to that parent. Katrina, when we think about the role that communication plays in the parenting style, where does honesty fall into the sphere of being able to, really coach your kid to moving forward and feeling like they can move from mental health to feeling somewhat adjusted to walk out into the world?
I think when honesty, growing up, you've heard it over and over, honesty is the best policy, right? But as an adult, are we always honest with our kids, or do we still keep some secrets, right? Sometimes as adults, we need to check our own selves and be honest about how we are raising our children. Sometimes we do things out of habit. Well, that's the way my mom did it. That's the way auntie did it. So I'm going to do it with my children. But let's be honest with ourselves. That might not have been the best solution. And so when you know better, you do better. And so being honest with your child and having that relationship where you can talk to them and sit down and be honest. Like we need to call a thing a thing. People would say, instead of somebody got diabetes, they got the sugar. They touched a little bit. No, let's call a thing a thing. We need to be honest so that our children recognize that, and they are not ashamed to get the help that they need.
Getting help isn't always easy. Dr. T, when we think about getting help, there are often resources that folks can have, whether it's in the family, in the school, in the community. But sometimes you have to lean into self and sit with yourself. I heard you say that at one point, your granny used to tell you to go sit down somewhere. What does it look like when you really sit with yourself? What can you explore about you to get your mental health right when you really sit with yourself?
Yeah. Well, before I jump in on that, I know my sister Charlotte had a point. She wanted to jump in on something that Katrina said. So I want to defer to Charlotte, and then I'm going to come right behind Charlotte.
Thank you, Dr. T. So one thing that that triggered me when Dr. Smith was talking is the fact that, sometimes we weaponize parenting. Sometimes we weaponize our roles as parents. And I know it to be true because I have done it. And y'all know I do not have a problem with telling on myself because, I write books about all my business. So whatever. But I know for a fact that sometimes we weaponize parenting even when our children are emerging out into the world, because we know for a fact that at 21, what can you still actually really do without me? You know what I'm saying? Like, really. And so sometimes we weaponize our roles as parents, and we use it as a place of controlling our children to be like, oh, well, no, you're not going to go here. You're not going to go there. I am the parent. I said this, and this. right? And so we weaponize who we are instead of knowing our role in the season of their life. Like there's the parenting role, there's the advisor role, there's the coaching role. But as parents, we should never weaponize our roles as parents as it pertains to our children. And so I just implore every parent who is raising an emerging adult, a grown age, or whatever you want to call them, is don't weaponize your role as a parent, because it's a trick of the enemy, because then that pushes your children further away from you. And then they're not going to come and talk to you. They're not going to feel safe with you. And you, even when they're emerging out into the world, you still want your children to have that place of safety and comfort and refuge with you.
Amen to that.
I know it was a reason why God let me see your hand and see you about to jump in. Because Shug, you just ran right on into where I was gonna come with that. When we talk about the sit down. Here's the thing that I really want everybody to understand, that before we tell our kids to sit down, have you sat yourself down?
Oh yes, girl.
Because I think a lot of times we are looking at the child and we want to say, well, you better. Well, baby, sugar, that's the fruit. We need to talk about this root.
Okay?
Because that can't be the fruit if it ain't something going on in the root that maybe you didn't address, or maybe I was having a conversation with a client and she was telling me something. And she was like, well, this and this and this and this and this. I said, well, you just told me that's how your mom treated you, correct? Yeah, that's how my mom. Well, did you like it? No, I didn't like. Well, why are you doing it to your daughter? And she had nothing to say, and this is something that we often play out over and over again, because we haven't dealt with our own issues. We haven't dealt with our own trauma. We haven't dealt with our own insecurity. And the minute we get a little bit of leadership, a little bit of control, a little bit of ledge over something or someone else, we get into this space where then we want to tell them and tell everybody what to do. And then you wonder why your relationship with your 21-year-old looks the way that it does. Or then you get to be of a certain age and then the kids don't want to come home for Christmas. Okay. And so this is where we have to really take inventory and take stock of ourselves. And this is not, you may not be a parent, but if you are an aunt, an uncle, a TT, a grandma, or whoever, you have a responsibility to look at yourself. Okay. Some of these 21-year-olds are carrying the burden of breaking generational curses, of breaking generational mental health issues that we would not deal with. They were on our doorstep.
Very true.
Okay? So we can't just look at the things that we see playing out in them without first examining ourselves and say, wait, did I sit myself down in therapy? Did I sit myself down in coaching? Maybe it's playing out in them in this way because there was something that I stepped away from my watch in watching this here that then is playing out over there, and what I'm seeing is that there are a lot of people that are my age in their, 40s, 50s, where now these mental health diseases and neuroses and, are coming on the table that have run unchecked for all of these years. So I think it's just really a time for all of us, everybody, 21, 13, 51, 71, for everybody just to sit themselves down and have a conversation with self to say, do I need to go and talk to a therapist? Do I need to go and talk to a coach? And that was actually a trick question, Sugar, because yes, everybody needs a therapist. Everybody needs a coach. I tell you guys all the time, I have a therapist, a personal coach, and a business coach. I have a team around me to make sure that I am together. Okay. And then let God come and say, hell, Tierney, you've been blessed and highly favored. You're going to have a child. Oh, yeah. Well, as soon as that baby can start teeter-tottering around, they're going to be in some play therapy, because I'm not going to say that I have it all together, even though this is what I do professionally. I'm making therapy. I'm making mental health and being healthy, happy, and whole from the outside and the inside a new narrative in my family, because I am part of that generation that is called to break some curses. Okay. So that's something that we really have to look at before we point the finger at anybody, before we try to take the speck out of anybody's eyes. These 21-year-olds, let's check the log in your eye, Sugar.
I think that those are great segues to understanding, because oftentimes young people and adults don't have a way to anchor themselves into anything. And I am going to start this next question with Reverend Deb, because when we talk about breaking these mental health cycles and how do we, look at becoming well and what does well look like, how do we, I'm going to use the term pivot toward dialogue and conversation that lets young people know it's okay to talk about things you've experienced, because all of us are triggered and traumatized by what happens in my house stays in my house. And that phrase in itself is why young people and a lot of adults are the way that they are today. So how do we begin the conversation of it's okay to talk about it?
You know what? I was traumatized when I heard you make that statement. It's in the house. It happens in the house. It stays in the house. I had to take a deep breath myself. But I think that one, parents can't be afraid to ask simple questions, open-ended questions, to begin to get their young adult children to talk. But if you haven't had that relationship with them, it's going to take a little time to build the kind of trust that
Mhm.
will allow your young adult to be open with you.
Yes.
If everything in their upbringing has been, you do this the way I say do it, and there's no openness for conversation, then you're going to have to create a pivot where you're calm. I want to pause right there because
Mhm.
we cannot get excited every time we hear them bring up a subject or talk about a situation. We need to just be silent and listen,
Mhm.
because sometimes we have to learn how to hear them
Mhm.
because we haven't done it, right? We're not accustomed to listening and hearing. We're accustomed to telling them what to do.
Mhm.
And this is not the season for that in the same way. So
Right.
you have to begin to be a good listener so that they feel comfortable building that relationship of being open to share. Now, they're not going to share everything. They're going to hold on to some things. But as you make the room comfortable, the space comfortable for them to come to you, to share things. And sometimes it may mean talking about your own experience to some degree,
Mhm.
because that's maybe an eye opener for them as well. Now you can't tell them everything. You don't want to tell them everything, but you do want to lay some ground so that they're comfortable. That's the word, for the conversation to be comfortable. And then sometimes they're just hard conversations
Yes.
where you have to sit with them and say, I'm really interested in hearing what's going on. I can tell there's something happening or
Yeah.
something has happened. Come, let's talk about it.
I like that. I'm gonna start with Charlotte, and then I'm gonna go to Katrina. Pick up on that, Charlotte, because after the long exhale, where do you pick up the dialogue?
Yeah.
You breathe it out. And it's really having a come let us reason together conversation.
Mm.
And like Reverend Deb said, is sometimes it's the hard conversations, right? And sometimes our children really do want to sometimes they want to have these hard conversations. But I kind of liken it to when my children used to think that I was a giant until they outgrew me. Right? Until they realize, oh, you're really actually under 5 feet tall. You know what I mean? But their whole lives before they outgrew me, or before they were getting ready to outgrow me, they thought that I was this big giant person, until they realized that I'm actually a real person. And so I think as a parent, it is my responsibility to not be so much of the giant, but to even humanize myself, because sometimes our children look at us as superhuman people. right? And so it's me being, even responsible in humanizing myself for my children and say, hey, listen, I see this is going on. I know what this looks like and I know what this is because I've been there and done that. And then you have to deal with your kids and be like, oh, what? You did such and such or whatever, but it's not really giving all of the information, but it's giving them the necessary pieces and parts so that they know. And sometimes you can, depending on the season of life, give them all the information. And sometimes you give them the pieces apart and parts of the information that they can handle so that they can understand, hey, yeah, my mom did go through this. My dad did go through this. I do feel safe in having this conversation. Yeah, I was drinking in college. I can remember the first time I heard one of my children curse around me. I was like, oh my gosh, where's the palm olive? But then, no, I'm serious. At first, it pricked me because I'm like, I did not train you to speak this way. And then I was like, let me see. Did they hear me cuss the other day? Or whatever. But then, when they started saying certain things that before I pounced on them, I wanted to do like Reverend Deb said, and I wanted to sit back because I still wanted them to, I didn't find it that they were being disrespectful, but I found that they were like, okay, I feel comfortable in having this conversation with my mom in this particular way so that I could actually hear them, or what have you. And so I think it is being able to even give your children, your emerging adults, and all of your children really, the permission to have conversations with you. Because I will tell you, as a mom who I know I have done some damage to my kids, I have gone to my kids and asked them, is there something that I've done or said to you that has hurt you or harmed you that we need to talk about? Mm-hmm. And we don't want to feel like we're those people that, oh, I've hurt my kids, because people in the world are going to hurt my kids. But you know what? As parents, you need to own the fact that you've done some hurt and damage to your kids. Mm-hmm. And as they're getting ready to go out into the world, as a mom, I know that how my boys interact with women is going to be a reflection of how they interact with me. As girls, because we have 4 girls, I know that how they interact with men outside of the world is going to be a reflection of how they interact with their dad. And we have not been a perfect mom. We have not been a perfect dad. And so now, before they go out into the world, we now have to ask them the hard questions, even about us. And say, hold a mirror to me and show me and tell me how I've hurt you and harmed you so that we can heal this part of you before you turn 21.
Yeah, I like that. Katrina.
Wow. I was taking notes over here. So I think one of the things Deb said was a lot of times we listen to react. And so we need to listen and do active listening, right? Because there is a difference. We're so groomed as a parent, we listen and then we come up with the solution, that we're not allowing the child or the young adult to sit in it and ask them, well, what would you do? What are some of your thoughts? Instead of always try to be solution driven.
As you can tell, y'all, this is a heavy conversation, helping 21-year-olds navigate space, helping the adults in their life navigate their space. When we come back, y'all, after the break, we're going to tap into how do we help young people, especially those in this pivotal age of 21, really navigate being on their own, because that's what it boils down to. You can't call home. You don't have that luxury sometimes. So what does that space look like in being able to say, I literally can weather life on my own if I needed to? We'll be back in a moment after the break.
Hello, I'm Isaac Hayes III, founder and CEO of Fanbase. Listen to what I'm about to tell you. The window to invest in Fanbase is closing. We've raised over $10.6 million of our $17 million goal. That means there's room for less than 6,370 people to invest in Fanbase for the average amount. The minimum to invest in Fanbase right now is $399. That makes you an owner in Fanbase today. Go to startengine.com/fanbase to invest. Why? Because current social apps have taken advantage of users for far too long, with content suppression, shadow banning, harmful racist content, and no real tools for monetization and equity. Fanbase has over 1.4 million users and counting, allowing anyone to reach all their following and monetize their content from day one. Social media is the new TV, and whoever owns the apps that distribute that content have the opportunity to own potential billion-dollar companies.
While big platforms with uncertain futures are failing to serve their users, Fanbase is stepping up to fill the gap. Don't wait until it's too late. Invest now, invest for yourself and your future. Go to startengine.com/fanbase and own the next generation of social media.
Ooh, child, turning 21. I mean, for us, it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of engagement. And in this segment, as you can tell, we've already talked about what we would tell our 21-year-old self. We talked about things we needed to be honest about, as adults, bringing generational curses to an end. What does self-regulation look like at 21? But then also, how do we have these mental health conversations around things that are difficult? Because we refused, when we were younger to, just address those things. Everybody, toolkit time. I mean, I like when I can pack some things. And even as we're talking, and Deb said she was triggered, just by what happens in the house stays in the house. And I was thinking as I was asking, I'm like, have I addressed all those things? Am I in a space where as an adult, I don't have any regrets or baggage? So let's talk about this 21-year-old toolkit. At 21, what are some of the things that 21-year-olds need to tuck away that you've learned that they can take with them through 31, 41, 51, 61, and beyond? I mean, where have you anchored yourself as a grown-up that at 21 you took with you saying, I might need this later on. So let me pack that away. Let's see. We're going to start with Dr. T. What you packing away?
I'm gonna tell you two things. One, Jesus. Don't pack Jesus. Put him right on in your bag. Put him in your backpack. Take him with you.
Yes.
Because when I tell you again, y'all heard me say I was drunk on South Beach. I had a good time. I know that if it wasn't for my spiritual connection with my Heavenly Father, if it wasn't for that inner voice saying, girl, now don't you go there, don't go to that part. Now hold on, now wait a minute, that I really I could have been in a completely different space. I would have been in a completely different, mindset, and it was only because of God, only because of Jesus, only because I spent that time praying and still going to, to services on campus and all of that it kept me safe. Even when I was out there, it still kept me safe. So that's the first thing to pack the load. Take the load with you. Put Jesus in your backpack. The other thing I would say is accountability. Okay. You have every right to make whatever decision that you want to make. Okay. Because you're grown. But I need you to be accountable for it. Don't go out here and do something and then want to come back and expect somebody else to clean it up for you. If you make whatever decision to not pay a bill, to go here, to go there, then you have to be ready to deal with the repercussions of those decisions. It is nobody else's responsibility to come and save you. Now, will people help you? Absolutely. But they will help you, not do it for you. Okay. And that's where that accountability piece comes in. Sometimes you got to look at yourself in the mirror and say, I did this to myself. I'm the one that put myself here, and then actually do the work to put yourself in a better situation, to make some better decisions, to learn from that so that you can continue to move forward. It's not the end of the world. But if you don't have that accountability and you want to keep blaming somebody else and pointing the finger, then sugar, that's the quickest way to get stuck. Okay. So pack Jesus and your accountability.
Absolutely. Katrina.
I don't know that question. Just you could go a lot of different ways with that. I think what I would pack would be I think Dr. Tierney took mine, so it kind of caught me off guard. The accountability piece is huge. As a young adult, being accountable for your actions is something that they have to learn and work towards, because for so long they've had their parent, and their parent has always had their back. And that now looks different when you become a 21-year-old. Your parent loves you and supports you, but the accountability now becomes all you.
Yeah.
I like that. So now we have two in that column because it's almost proven now. You need accountability in Jesus.
Yes.
Charlotte Avery.
I would say pack self-awareness, and I would say pack financial planning. Because it's easy to go to college or go out in the world, and whether you're making money or your parents are giving you money or whatever, and then spend all your money. And we are definitely in an age where our children, we need to teach them we need to teach them how to be self-aware and emotional maturity, but we also need to teach them how to have a financial plan and focus, because it's easy to get off your focus. And also learn food prep. How about that? Because, learn how to cook for yourself and somebody else. That'll help you. That'll serve you later down the road when you're trying to have relationships past college.
Learn how to cook. Yeah.
Yeah. I know how, but I don't like it. So it's like, we just gonna leave that over there in the corner. We ain't cooking.
Oh my God. Oh Lord, what are we packing for the 21-year-old
Deb? Friends around. It can bring some good friends.
We can gather around a pizza. I'm good at ordering takeout or catering. Yeah.
Yeah. So, you know what? I was thinking about this question, and I think one important thing that needs to be a part of the toolkit is self-confidence.
Yes.
Trust yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And in the same vein, be aware of how you feel around the people you hang out with.
Yes,
Are these
discernment.
people that make you feel joyful about life and about living and about you? Or are these people who cause you to shrink, to not be fully who you are, who diminish who you are?
Come on
Pay
here.
attention to how the people you spend your time with make you feel, and choose the joy of being around people who elevate you in all the areas.
Girl, you were just in my conversation with my daughter on yesterday.
Yeah, it's important.
Let me tell y'all, parents are going to appreciate this dialogue and conversation, but at the same time, even though it's serious, we have to laugh about it, because there are times that we can get too serious and we just sort of lose our own mind. And with that, let's talk for a moment about these guardians. What will we put in these guardians toolkit? Because there's the raising and then there's the releasing. The raising and the releasing. At what access point did you realize you were okay letting your little person fly away?
I don't know, because I'm not there yet.
Okay.
So y'all answer that, and I'll wait.
That's interesting, because I don't know, you released them. Maybe it is 21. All of mine are past that age, and while they're off and doing their own thing and they're grown, they always know they can run something by me. I don't control anything that happens in their household, but I'm always available to listen and let them bounce something off of me.
I like that. So presence. I think that's what you described in listening to you, is be present. Because I know parents are never going to fully let their children just go. But 21, they go to college, they go to military, they go to get married, they go off to school, whatever it is that happens. HIPAA doesn't allow you.
So don't.
What is it? FERPA doesn't allow you. These different types of forms don't allow you, FOIA, yes, don't allow you as well to just kind of, call up and find out any information that you want to. So at some point you have to, be present enough for them to run back to you with something they have to handle on their own in their young adult space.
Well, yeah, presence and preparation.
Okay.
Preparation really, really, really matters, because even when you're talking about FERPA and HIPAA and things of that nature, and you really see the dynamics. Like when my daughter got injured in college, and that brought HIPAA and FERPA to light about what I could do and what I couldn't do for her. And so you still have to be able to prepare and have those types of conversations with your children, knowing that where they're still on your health insurance. And you have to make those things real to them, because if they were in a car accident, do they want their organs donated? Who do you want speaking for you? Because if it's not me, then who is it going to be? You know what I'm saying? So there are certain real life scenarios that you've got to really put out there with your children as far as preparation is concerned. And even though I was joking, about like, well, I don't know when that is or whatever, the reality of it is that I don't really know if there's ever a specific time that prepares you for that. Because literally, once your children are a certain age and they're getting ready to get out of they're getting ready to thrive and, get out of your house, it's really that time. It's the preparation that leads up to that kind of gives you the confidence, or the lack thereof, to say, did I do enough? And the thing is, as parents, we would have never felt that we did enough. As a mom, and I always ask my kids, like even my younger kids, my emerging adults, I ask them, is there something that I didn't teach you before you leave to go out into the world? Whether it's cooking your favorite meal, whether it's financial awareness, whether it's, in dealing with relationships, tell me. Give your children permission to tell you what it is that they needed to learn or that they want to learn from you. And that's okay.
Yeah. If I can weigh in on this from the standpoint of because I'm not a mother, but from the standpoint of the 21-year-old that, went away from Memphis, Tennessee, all the way to Miami. And, my grandmother is the nurturer. She was the one that was the nurturing mother figure. And my mom was the business, handle your business. This is how you. And so from that vantage point, I think it's important. It's not so much an age. I think it was just more so the maturity level. So once they saw how I was moving and responding and my decisions, and that I was keeping my word, that I was where I said I was going to be, then they started to step back little by little to give me a little bit more leeway, a little bit more freedom and liberties. And then as they saw that I could handle that, then they, really just kind of released the reins. So by the time I got to college, I was, ready to go. So I think what Charlotte is saying about the preparation piece, it's making sure that we're talking about 21-year-olds, but the preparation starts, in elementary. It starts in, having them clean their own room and pick up their own crayons. It starts in, having them being able to kind of speak up for themselves and having that open dialogue. So by the time we get to 21, there's not necessarily a fear on my part, because I knew that if I got my heart broken or if anything happened, I could always go to my grandmother. I could always lay my head on her shoulder and cry. And she would, nurture me and hug me. And then she would send me right back out and say, now, you have to continue, and so that gave me a confidence to be able to go so far away from home, where I didn't know anybody, no family, all the way at the bottom of Florida, and be able to know that I could do it because they had been giving me and preparing me for this level of freedom, for this level of accountability, all the while. And they were watching me as I was watching them, how they lived. They were watching me and my maturity level to know that I was ready to handle it. But if something were to happen, I knew that I could always go back and, take a beat, take a breath before I launch back out again.
Absolutely. These are powerful words. Deb, add on.
So I just want to amen what Dr. T just said. For me, it was when I began to see my son take responsibility for things. When things would happen and his response to them, and the way that he was able to communicate back to me what was going on. And so then I knew that, okay, he got it. And I could step, as Dr. T said, I could step back and allow him a little bit more room to grow and develop in making decisions on his own, and trust that he had what he needed. So absolutely amen to everything you just said.
I love that. This show today has been incredible with so many tips and tools that we can take along with us as we help other people navigate their journey. When we come back after the break, I'll give my reflection.
Hello, I'm Isaac Hayes III, founder and CEO of Fanbase. Listen to what I'm about to tell you. The window to invest in Fanbase is closing. We've raised over $10.6 million of our $17 million goal. That means there's room for less than 6,370 people to invest in Fanbase for the average amount. The minimum to invest in Fanbase right now is $399. That makes you an owner in Fanbase today. Go to startengine.com/fanbase to invest. Why? Because current social apps have taken advantage of users for far too long, with content suppression, shadow banning, harmful racist content, and no real tools for monetization and equity. Fanbase has over 1.4 million users and counting, allowing anyone to reach all their following and monetize their content from day one. Social media is the new TV, and whoever owns the apps that distribute that content have the opportunity to own potential billion-dollar companies. While big platforms with uncertain futures are failing to serve their users, Fanbase is stepping up to fill the gap. Don't wait until it's too late. Invest now, invest for yourself and your future. Go to startengine.com/fanbase and own the next generation of social media.
Welcome back, everyone. Let me just tell you, I have been so inspired today by these words of wisdom that have been deposited into us. So whether you're turning 21 or helping someone to turn 21, this pivoting requires us to pack our peace, to pray, to take our patience with us, to remember to be present in everything that we do, and allow ourselves to just take an opportunity to live and enjoy the journey. Thank you all for watching. Bye now.